Well, let's call the meeting to order. Svetlana, you want to take the roll real quick?
I can, yes. Sal just asked me for the roster, but I guess I can just go ahead and call people.
Yeah.
Catherine Jones,
Here, present.
good morning. Lydia Padilla,
Present.
good morning, Lydia. Paul Smith,
Present.
James Alexander,
Morning.
great, good morning. Dale Rusat, Dale. Danny Carroll,
Present.
Henry Johnson, no. Julie Ficus,
Present.
great. Sal Valadez,
Present.
great. Sherry Tillis. Sherry, I know you're there.
Good morning,
Good
present.
morning. Good morning. Kimberly Chaplin, not here. Mary Lammy, not here. Tambra Cross. Tambra,
Present.
great. I know you were there. Good morning.
Good morning.
Crystal Heron. Crystal. I do not see Crystal. Say no. Dallas Holland. No. John Stifler. John Stifler, are you with us? John is not responding. Tommy Davis. Tommy Davis, no. Michael Martino.
Here.
Wonderful. Good morning, sir. Edward Bryan.
Morning here.
Good morning. Danita Neal. Danita. Miss Danita, you are with us, I know. Danita. Danita, can you hear us?
It looks like she's muted.
Indy, for some reason I cannot unmute Danita.
Unmute herself. You can ask her to unmute. She'll unmute herself.
Yeah, well, Danita, Miss Neal. All right, we'll just say kind of here, but we'll look back to her. Michelle Graham.
Morning.
Morning, Michelle. Glad to see you. Roger Spearman. Roger Spearman. Roger, I think you are here. Maybe he didn't make it yet. Jan Barrett.
I'm here.
You here? Very good. Good morning. Miss Lou Snail.
I don't see her.
Lou Snail, I don't see her either. And Suzanne. Miss
Egan,
Suzanne?
present.
Yes, you're present. Very good. Good morning. This, I believe, is all. We have 14 people, potentially 15 with Danita when she responds.
Okay, sounds like we have a quorum. Okay, so let's move on along the agenda. First item we see here is a board member spotlight. Ms. Susan Egan. Susan?
Sure. I'm Susie Egan. I work for Stiefel. Worked for Stiefel for almost 15 years. I currently work for the bank division. In that role, I am the community development director, which means that I am in charge of Stiefel's external community efforts and specifically the bank's outreach efforts to low to moderate income communities. effectively making sure that we don't only lend to upper income and in upper income tracts. As part of that, I actually worked on the contractor loan fund for multiple years with Howard Hayes, which is how I got to know him. And I was on the board and also sort of the administrative person behind that effort. And I'm originally from Memphis, not from St. Louis. So not sure what else I could tell you.
Okay, well, welcome.
Thank you.
Next, we have a staff member spotlight, Ms. Svetlana.
Oh, yeah. Good morning again. My name is Svetlana Bostik, and today I would like to give you a brief overview of the communications initiatives that we are doing here in Slate. I am involved in internal communications and external communications. For the internal part, you know, I consider the board is our internal audience, my internal audience. And you know me, I will be communicating with you, trying to stay organized, trying to help you to stay informed, being prepared for the meetings. So I'm your main contact for the board, and I also respond to the public requests on behalf of the board as well. The majority of my time here at Slate is spent on external communications. This is us talking to the public and to the target audiences. For that, I work very closely with Mr. Hayes and EDSI leadership. They assign me projects of various nature. Those might be social media, writing press releases, pitching stories to the media, managing Slate website, developing outreach strategies if needed. So we are quite busy. You all know our mission is to help low-income families, low-income individuals with jobs. And do you know by any chance another term for low-income individuals? This is a marketing term. And these people are called hard to find. It's a hard to find category. And yes, our audience, our target audience is extremely hard to find. In some cases, most cases, they don't want to be found, especially if it's a government looking for them. And we are the government. And so it creates rather anxiety instead of excitement. And so our job here at State is extremely hard. First find these people and then serve them well. And so as you can imagine, we are equipped with a lot of challenges here. And those challenges were deepened by the COVID. And we quickly realized that we're not gonna get engagement from people at this time. And so we changed our communication message to a very simple message. We try to stay, to help people just stay connected to us. And we were broadcasting positive messages of hope, that we are here for them. Should they need us, they can always reach us. And those messages were broadcasted on social media, on our website, and also we did stories on the media. 2 stories went out on the air about how Slate is.
Lana?
Yeah.
If we could pause on hope, packed agenda for the chairman today. I'll ask the members, are there any questions for Svetlana? If not, we'll move to the next item.
We have
Okay.
exciting, I didn't get to the most exciting part, but hopefully later.
No, you will. You are a major part of what we do around here. We appreciate you, and that's why you were chosen. The board needs to know those that support us day in, day out. But as of now, we'll turn the agenda back over to the chairman.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, thank you, Svetlana.
Mhm.
Now to the consent agenda. Oh, excuse me, before we get there, we have meeting approval minutes. Minutes from the previous meeting. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay, is there any discussion on the minutes?
Sorry, who is it? Jan moved
Yeah, Ian Barrett.
and Barrett. Jan Barrett, and who seconded?
Sal.
Sal
Oh,
seconded.
Ed.
No,
Huh?
Lydia did.
Lydia did.
Lydia.
Got it.
Hearing no discussion, we move to a vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes from the previous meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Minutes approved. Now we move on to the consent agenda. Let's see. Do we have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
This is Donnie. I'll make that motion to accept the consent agenda.
Okay. Is there a second?
Sal.
Okay. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. There is no new business, so now we'll move on to reports.
Pardon me, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
The presentation from.
Oh, I skipped that. I'm sorry. Thank you for catching that, Howard. I appreciate that.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Rochelle. I just zipped right past you.
Problem. We just got everything by osmosis.
It is a little break and doing something a little different, but it's a good one. I think this is a very important part of what we do at each of our meetings moving forward. So please, Rochelle.
Okay, I think that Svetlana or one of the staff will help me with the screen. And the state is requiring that certain trainings be provided to the board. And one of the things we're going to talk about today, which is a requirement, is board integrity. So whoever has control of the screen, if they could put the presentation up, that would be great. And until they do, I'm going to move forward so I don't hold up the meeting. There we go. Okay, so we're going to talk about board integrity today. And let's see if we can go to the next slide. As you all can see, it's me, Rochelle. I have been working with the board and the staff since 2019 as we transitioned from the previous group, and have had a lot of contact and a lot of very worthwhile experiences working with the staff and the board. So it's great. Okay, so what are the responsibilities of the board, whoever is controlling, if we could move forward? So what are the responsibilities of WIOA, what we call majority private sector boards? And as you know, our board is majority private sector, but we also have representatives from organized labor, economic development, education, community-based organizations, the governmental entities, and also our core partners, of which Donnie, for example, is one and has been on our board for a long time with a lot of experience with respect to these programs. Okay.
Next, I'm doing it, Rochelle. Next one.
Yeah. All right. So first of all, understand that together with the mayor, who's our chief elected official, we will make decisions about the investment of resources to implement the workforce system in St. Louis. So whatever the formula allocation is, whatever the dollar amount is that we get, it is the board who looks at the budget annually and says, well, this much is going to go to our providers, this much will go for communication or promotion, this much or outreach, this much will go to buy technological tools. So we give the board the power to make decisions and recommendations with respect to how we're going to invest resources. And because it is millions of dollars every year, it's a very important job that you all have. In addition to which, the board is asked to create and approve policies that are related to these resources. So for example, under WIOA, when we serve the adult population, we have certain priorities we need to meet in terms of who we serve first if there was, for example, a line. But the law also allows local boards to determine what priorities should be included. So not only does the federal government and the state government say, well, here's who we want you to serve, local boards have that option as well. And about a year ago, we came to the local board and we said, well, look, if public housing says that somebody is poor if they're earning, just making up this number, $35,000 a year. Well, if that's good enough for public housing, we want to be able to serve those individuals in our adult population as well. And in fact, the board approved a policy like that. So we bring the board policies with respect to how we operate the programs, and you all approve those policies. And finally, another very important, or maybe the most important responsibility you have is oversight. And so at any time at all, it is within the purview of the board to say, well, we'd like to know, how is everything going? How are you performing? How are you spending your dollars? How does budget look versus actual expenditures? How are you doing with the various funding streams? And we get reports. The state monitors us frequently, and we usually put those reports on the agenda so the board will know what's happening. And we also monitor. And when there's a monitoring report that's appropriate, we put that on the agenda also, because that is within the purview of your doing your oversight and being able to ask questions. And also, we have very smart people on our board. So the collective of the staff and the board, when there's something we have to deal with, whether it's good or bad, means we have many more heads than just one giving us input on how to proceed. You know, one time, one of my boards, the board had overspent by $1 million the amount of money available in the local area. Well, frankly, usually people get fired for that. But in this case, the director wasn't fired, but he did come to the board immediately and said, you know, something happened with fiscal, we became over obligated, and the board together with that director sat down to figure out, okay, here's how we're going to reconcile and bring our budget back into compliance. And they put a plan together, and every month the director reported, he wasn't fired. And by the end of the year, the dollars were again in compliance. So you had a couple of things going over there. You had a director who understood the value of all of that expertise on the board, and also understood the value of transparency. Didn't try to hide it, didn't try to sweep it on the rug, under the rug, but actually brought it to the board and sought their input for the solution. Okay, next one. So local board responsibilities can kind of be divided into three areas. One is strategic, the other is capacity building, and the third is alignment and operations. And under strategic, we bring you every couple of years the plan to approve. And usually we give you an executive summary. The plan is, I don't know, it's like a John Grisham novel. It's about 150 pages, but it is the roadmap for what we are going to be doing. It's the roadmap of how we plan to implement business services, job seeker services, and do it strategically with the input of the board that will help us figure out how to analyze what's going on in our labor market, how to localize it, and then how to take a direction that's correct for our local area. And so look, we have the board oversees and approves the local plan. The board helps us localize labor market information. We get labor market information from the state all the time, but at the local level, we know what's going on very often, very soon before the state does. You know, my husband used to work for Siemens, and what would happen is he was in the water division, and when his customers stopped paying on time and his collections were out 30 or 60 days, he would come to me and he would say, you know, Rochelle, something's going on here with the economy. It's slowing down. My clients always pay on time and not paying on time. He said, what's going on? And he knew before the state knew that we were heading to a bump in the economy because people were not paying on time. And so we know when we have emerging industries in our local area. Economic development knows when people are moving into our area. And so we count on the board to give us those signals so we can work with education, get the right courses of training on our list for people to upskill and be able to really be, you know, head and shoulders above the rest. We're required to negotiate performance measures. We have 6 performance measures for adults, dislocated workers, and youth. And those same measures are also the same measures that adult literacy has to respond to, Wagner-Pfizer or our National Labor Exchange has to respond to, and vocational rehabilitation has to respond to. They're all negotiated at different baselines, but We negotiate the measures with the state, and we come back to report to you on what it is we have to do. And then we put a performance report on our agenda each time so that you all will know how we are doing. The board is also required to approve the budget, and next month we will be bringing you the budget for the upcoming year so that you can approve the budget and then we can submit it to the state. And in addition to which, we look for the board to give us direction in terms of the development of career pathways. When you look at capacity building, we look to the board to identify promising practices. We talked about localizing labor market information and promoting industry sector partnerships. And finally, we also look for the board to align our operations. So when we bring you courses of training for approval, we are looking for input with respect to, yes, this course of training, it's got a good reputation. It looks like it's meeting the needs of a demand occupation, and this needs to go on the list. We also come to you to select our one-stop operator, and right now, EDSI, our Title I career services provider, our one-stop provider, is also our one-stop operator. We bring our memorandum of understandings to you with our legislative one-stop partners so you can approve them, and you help us select our youth providers, and at the end of the day, do not only fiscal oversight, but also program oversight. Okay. So go ahead. Next one. So what are your responsibilities as a board member? Well, for one thing, as a board member, you're expected to exercise the same care you would when making decisions for the organization that an ordinarily prudent person would. But you'll always say, you know what? When you vote on something, is this something you can feel comfortable with? Is this something you can be proud of? Is this something you will have no problem saying, this is why I voted for it? And that's kind of what it means to exercise reasonable care. You know, I had a board one time who thought it was reasonable to have dinner for the board members because they're all volunteers. And at that dinner, the local area had paid for a violin quartet. They had quite expensive catering. They had entertainment. And at the end of the day, they showed up in the newspapers, and that local area was very shortly thereafter reorganized. Why? Because if we're getting funds to help people who are disadvantaged, if we're getting funds to help people move from unemployment to employment, from employment to self-sufficient employment, it's not appropriate for public funds to be spent on a lavish dinner. That was very bad judgment on the part of that board. You have a duty of loyalty. Board members must not use information gained through their position for personal gain. So for example, and you know, I like to use true examples so that you know I don't just make up this stuff I've dealt with in my career. I had a board that wanted to move its offices, and one of the board members happened to have a building that was vacant and said to the director, come to my building because I'll give you a good deal. But when the auditors looked at it, it was impossible to prove it was a good deal. What it looked like was that that board member used information that was gained through serving on the board in order to satisfy a pecuniary interest of theirs. So it is important that when you find things out at the board, that those things are not used for purposes of furthering your own interests. Okay, next one. You also have a duty of obedience. It's kind of an odd word, but basically what that means is that you would be faithful to the mission of the organization and not act in a way that's inconsistent with the board's goals. And so we're trusting you the public is trusting you to manage our funds. Our funds are public funds, and that you would think about that every time that we make a decision on when we want to invest in this initiative or we want to invest in that initiative. Okay, next. One of the things that's always important for boards to remember is that we must make sure that we do not violate conflict of interest rules. Conflict of interest is federal law. It's written actually into the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. And it may even be more restrictive for our public partners than state law is. So for example, in Florida where I live, if you are representing a county government or a state agency, it's not considered a conflict of interest for you to vote on a matter that would benefit your agency because you don't gain a personal benefit out of that. But under federal law, that is prohibited. So even though you may have state laws that allow something, the federal law is very restrictive when it comes to conflict of interest. Next one. So what is the conflict of interest rule, okay? And this applies to both personal and organizational conflicts of interest. The City of St. Louis workforce board members may not vote on matters that come before you regarding the provision of services by the member. So Donnie should not vote if we're going to vote to give Wagner Pizer more money. Or the organization, the provision of services by that member or an organization they represent. So let's just say that one of our members is on the board of the St. Louis SLDC. Well, we're thinking about funding the SLDC, and even though there's no benefit directly to that board member, because the board member sits on the board of the SLDC, they would need to declare a conflict of interest. So we don't vote on matters that can benefit an organization or that can result in a financial benefit to you or your immediate family. And one of the things that's very important is that when you declare a conflict, that it is noted in the minutes, because that's the public record showing you did the right thing. Next. What about discussion? What about discussion? You know, sometimes what happens is somebody has a conflict, but they feel they have very, very important information that the board should really know before they vote. Well, button your lips, because the conflict rule has been defined to include participation in any process leading up to the vote. And so when the matter that you have a conflict with comes up, you need to declare the conflict and refrain from discussion. Do not add, contribute, or subtract from the discussion. Next one. What about committees? What about if you're in a committee meeting? Well, committee meetings are public, just like board meetings are. They include board members, and we discuss things like policies, procurements, financial decisions before they come to the board for the vote. And those are what we call processes leading up to a vote. And so any kind of process is going to lead up to a vote that can affect a board member, their family, or an organization they represent. You would declare your conflict at the committee level as well and refrain from discussion. Go ahead. I had family planning on one of my committees for one of the boards I do work for, and the issue was whether to set aside some funds under TANF to help family planning. And the woman who represented family planning, she just could not keep back. She said, no, but I have very important things. I want to share them with the board before they vote. Really very, very important. And I said, well, if you share those important things, I just can guarantee you there will be no funding for you. At which point she said, what? And she became quiet. So we have to really be careful that we observe conflict of interest. By the way, in most states, violation of conflicts of interest is considered a personal violation as opposed to a board violation, and people can be held criminally responsible for violating conflict of interest rules. While you don't hear about that happening very much with boards, you sometimes hear about it happening with elected officials who sometimes don't recognize there's a line between their personal interests and their public interests. So be very careful about that. And so even when a member believes their comments during a discussion are true or provide information, refrain from discussing them, avoid the appearance of a conflict of interest, and do not be perceived as trying to influence a vote, which will then benefit yourself. Okay, next one. How about a code of conduct? You know, I'm sure many of you here, well, we have a code of conduct. What's a code of conduct all about? Well, a code of conduct governs the way in which we behave as a board member. And so I always say to people, well, how would you feel about hearing about your actions on the 6 o'clock news? Or, you know, getting up in the morning and you open the St. Louis Dispatch and there you are in big 3-inch black bold letters about some action or some comment you made at a board meeting. If you don't want to read about yourself in the papers, if you don't want to see yourself on the news, remember that it is very important to observe conflict of interest and the elements of code of conduct. Next. So what constitutes code of conduct in addition to some of the things we've spoken about? Well, for one thing, we should never solicit or accept a gratuity, a favor, or anything of monetary value from employees or from contractors or parties to a subcontract. And this really seems like everybody would know that. I mean, who's going to bribe me to vote? But what if a big vote is coming up on a contract and the provider calls the board chair, Paul, I'd love to go to lunch with you. I want to tell you about all the great things we did this year. And Paul says very innocently, well, yeah, I'd love to hear about that because we are going to be talking about your contract renewal. And all of a sudden, Paul finds himself at the most expensive restaurant in St. Louis. He has wine, he has shrimp cocktail for his appetizer. And at the end of the meal, the provider says, let me have that bill, and puts his hand over the check and says, you know, Paul, this is my treat. I so appreciate your thinking of me and listening to all the things I had to say. Is Paul going to get in trouble? Nod. Yes, Paul is going to get in trouble. He didn't realize it. He didn't know when he accepted that this was going to be a situation where all of a sudden a $300 dinner was going to be picked up by a provider. And so we had to be very careful sometimes, things that we don't think twice about. We need to think about it from the perspective of, will I be voting on this? Is this somebody who's looking for a favor from me? And we might, for example, you know, every year around Christmas time, we always get, every office gets lots of chocolate and candy and other things. When somebody gives us big things, I say, give it away to the hospital or give it back to the provider. When somebody gives a box of chocolate and every staff person is going to have a piece, I don't think that's influencing anybody's actions or their votes about that provider. So we like to exercise this with some modicum of restraint. And the city of St. Louis does have rules, and we would follow the city of St. Louis rules with respect to code of conduct in that regard. Please also be aware that violations of code of conduct require disciplinary actions. So you would say, oh yeah, right. So is Howard going to call me into his office for a spanking? Well, no. But if there are violations of code of conduct, it could mean that somebody is removed from the board or publicly sanctioned or has some other pleasant action that relates to the behavior. So we try to be very sure. And whenever you're not sure, Becky is there. She is our city solicitor, and she knows all the rules and can always advise you. So before acting, she's the one to ask. Okay, next. So we are also supposed to operate in a control environment. And what's a control environment? It's an environment in which we have at the very bottom on the right of the screen where we get information and communication, right? And we monitor those informations and communications. We monitor in order to keep our risk management levels down. And we do that by making sure the control environment is such that we have control activities and that process of internal control has checks and balances. Okay, next one. In a control environment, one of the things we look at, I know it sounds silly because how do we measure it? But we look at character, integrity, and ethical values. You know, 2 years ago, our chair was very concerned about what was happening with the organization. And at that time, she was very worried. And because of that, she took her worries to the authorities in order to make sure that the funds and the programs that were operating in the city were doing what they were supposed to. That was a very hard thing to do, and it was a very brave thing to do. And that's what we really mean by character and integrity. But now we have a good chain of command. Howard is our top dog. And where something is awry, board members know they can go to him. They can go to Becky. We have city solicitor assigned. And Becky and Howard would work with a board member when something is brought to their attention to then carry it through the proper chain of command and make sure it is addressed. So it is the tone of the top, and Howard sets that tone. The mayor sets that tone to say we are an entity that has integrity. It's the competence of our management, and we show our competence to a certain degree by our agendas. And so if there's something that does not appear on a board agenda and you're curious about it, or you don't understand about it, or you think it should be on an agenda and it's not, the agenda belongs to the board, and you have every right to ask about it and say, can we hear something about this subject or that subject? Because the control environment means both accountability and oversight. Okay. Howard. So what are the things that we use to achieve a control environment? Well, we have a mission statement. It's in our plan. We have a code of conduct. We have committees, and things come up through the committees to our board. We have tenure and depth of senior management. You know, Cassandra has been with us for a very long time. She really understands the system. She knows the ins and outs of everything that we do. She stepped into the position of assistant executive director this year and brings a lot of experience and a wealth of knowledge with her. Howard has been in our community for many, many years and worked across many different organizations. And that's what they mean by depth of senior management and tenure. We often invest in staff development, and we also invest in board development. We have segregation of duties. So we don't have the same person who wants to buy something, receive something. And one of the boards that I represent, the purchasing director was ordering everything and then was receiving everything. And then we found out that things were being delivered to a vacant lot. And so in order to make sure that doesn't happen, there has to be segregation of duties. The board looks at the budget. You know where we're spending our money. You know that we're not going to Australia in order to investigate workforce over there, you know, and have a little vacation. So you look at the budget and how we're spending our money. You look at our plan, and you also review our performance reports. Next. So local workforce boards also, finally, I want to mention, have to conduct business in an open manner. And that's why you have a notice. That's why we're being recorded. That's why Svetlana finds out, well, who is at the meeting and is there anybody from the public at the meeting? That's why at the end of the meeting, Paul will say, is there anybody here from the public that would like to comment on our business? We notice our agendas, we publish them, and also we wait for meetings to discuss the items on the agenda. We don't discuss them what we call outside the sunshine. Go ahead, next one. Howard? So that is your short lesson on integrity for today and how you operate your board. I'm very happy to answer questions. I don't want to hold up your meeting at this time, but I work very closely with Howard and Becky, and I am always available through them for anything that might come up for which you would like my input. Thank you so very much, Paul, and I hope we have satisfied the state's requirement.
Thank you. Thank you, Rochelle. So we're moving on along now with the agenda. I believe we left off at reports, subrecipient report.
Yes. The most recent subrecipient report is has been attached to your agenda. And as you can see from the report, enrollments are low in all funding streams, adult, youth, and dislocated worker. As you know, EDSI came to slate in the midst of transition of leadership and staffing up, they faced within a few months COVID-19 pandemic. So they have performed under very difficult circumstances. However, as of right now, the state nor the Department of Labor has taken any of that into consideration. So we are working with them with a performance plan on a weekly basis. We're holding their feet to the fire for accountability, because at the end of the day, this board must see performance. Yet as of now, we are saying that more work needs to be done, but we have the processes in place to ensure it is. We have right now the regional manager, Larry Melf, and if the board has any questions for Mr. Melf, he's here. Okay, if there are no questions for Mr. Melf, then I'll turn it back over to our chair, Mr. Smith.
Next report would be the state performance report.
We just completed it, Paul. We just went through it.
All right, so we'll move on to St. Louis unemployment. If you take a look at the chart there, you'll see how our unemployment compared to prior year. Looks like it's up a little bit. Howard, do you have any comments on that?
No, only it's strange feedback coming from the market. The economy is gearing back up. Signs are going up looking for workers, but we receive feedback that because of all the supports from the American Recovery Act, people aren't necessarily applying for open positions, but hopefully that will change soon.
Okay. All right. So there's no summary of committee meetings. So we'll move on to surveys of the Cities America Job Center. I believe that was attached to the packet.
Yes.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions on that? Did everybody get a chance to look through it a little bit?
Yes, I have one question. I was looking through the feedback forms and I was just wondering, has EDSI made any attempts to contact people who may have answered no in some of the sections, like, for instance, on page 10 of 14, Exhibit 3? Did you discuss or receive information about programs or services of which you were unaware? You had 68% said yes and 31% said no. So in your follow-up, is there any attempt made to bring those 31% back in to provide them with additional services, which could impact your enrollment rate or your success rate in that area?
Good morning. Yes, good morning, Larry Melf with EDSI. Yes, so absolutely. So what we've done is anybody who's filled out our survey, we get it from the state each week, is anybody who leaves their contact information on the surveys and they state that they did not receive information, we'll follow up with them and then look at getting sort of a report out to reconnect them with any services. Which is great about the report is you can see, I think it's towards the end, anybody who does click no or wants more information or feels like they didn't get information from the center, we're able to reconnect with them.
I noticed another piece of information that I thought was interesting is just that we're reaching a lot of female folks, but not a lot of male folks. And that was just kind of, you know, something that I wondered, is there some way that we need to target the approach more towards some of the males, and why is that missing?
Well, the information that I do know, the most recent report I had is that women have reported they've come out of the pandemic in worse shape than when it began. I know we need to build bridges with our Father Support Center because of you know, the thousands literally, and we just lost the leadership over there, and that's a sad cause for the entire region right now. But you know, it's difficult sometimes, especially with the pandemic. But as you know, EDSI focused on 3 neighborhoods with the highest homicide rates, and frankly, most of the homicides are with young men. But even during the pandemic, they focused on Walnut Park, East and West, as well as Wales Goodfellow, to try to reach them with placement and job assistance, because all of the studies tell us that homicides are tied to lack of employment. So EDSI needs to do a better job. We will work with them and assist them, but we can work and get those numbers up and report back to the board.
One of the
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, one of the other items that we'll also look at too is based upon the customers that we serve. We'll take a look at gender and also to see if there's a disconnect with survey completions when it comes to see if there is sort of a correlation there as well. In addition to, as Howard mentioned, we'll take a look at sort of our outreach in the community and to kind of do a deeper dive into that element.
Larry, this is Lydia. I just have a question. Are all of our does all of our technology allow our customers to do the surveys, apply everything on their phone, or do they need a computer? Are we seeing a challenge with that connectivity?
Yes, I think there is a challenge with the surveys and the connection to it. So I think that's one thing that we've been working on is getting QR codes set up. So the survey, you can kind of just take your phone and kind of scan to it to do it. I think we have seen sort of that access to the survey. And also, I think a technology is a barrier. So that's one of the action items that we've been working on. And I'll be sure to report out too to see how we can make the survey easier and readily available to our customers as well, because I think that might also be something that we're seeing just in terms of the overall results.
And just societal trends and headwinds that we're facing. Our target to a certain extent is low to moderate income individuals. And unfortunately, many males are caught up in incarceration, justice involved. And there's another interesting, if not disturbing trend. More women are seeking higher education than males from low and moderate income backgrounds. So it's going to take additional work, I believe, to reach the male population, low and mod.
Are we also seeing reading deficits playing a role in you know, some of the things that you're experiencing? So even with survey completion, if you can't read the survey, you can't complete the survey. Is that also a barrier that we're seeing for folks moving forward?
I just had a 7 o'clock call with the new administration, and one of the things they're looking at is putting additional dollars from the American Recovery Act to remedial assistance. And I'll keep the board abreast of those discussions. And hopefully soon you will meet our new mayor.
And I did want to chime there just to follow up, Julie, to your question. I think that is I think that's a really good feedback, where I think oftentimes with the surveys, it's click here, fill out this information. And maybe one thing that we can look at doing is just adding a phone number if we don't already have it on that survey to say, if you have questions or difficulty in completing this, call this number, as another way to be able to just capture that data.
I've got a question. It has to do with the process, and maybe we could discuss this in another committee, but the detailed information is important. It's great, but there were 86 pages, and I was wondering if there's any thought to giving an executive summary of sorts so you can encapsulate, because there's redundancy in the type of reports. So I don't know if that's possible. The other question is there any way to provide more detailed demographic and based on the zip codes that we're talking about, where our footprint is, and I understand where you're focusing, but there are other communities that need the services. So I'm interested, for example, in the ethnic data, if you have it, language data, if you have it. And again, these may be issues that we can discuss in another committee.
No, Paul, this is good feedback. But again, this data is organized and submitted from the state, but we have our one-stop operator, Rebecca Ritter. Larry, I have some notes from Sal's comments. I'd like to be able to turn those over to Rebecca and have her contact the state so that we can firm up some of this and ask for additional formulation of the data and in more graphic form so that the board members could see some executive summary type information and then have a more informed view of what we're presenting to them.
Excellent, Howard. Sounds like a great plan, and we can work on both the executive summary and also maybe even getting that visual of our City of St. Louis region and per zip codes where we are serving individuals, and then also kind of compare it to some other graphs to see if we can kind of do an overlay of sort of any gaps in terms of reach within the communities.
And the ethnicity information that Sal mentioned.
Got it.
Thank you.
Any further questions on the survey? Okay, we'll move on to the regular agenda now, new business, subrecipient EDSI contract extension.
Yes, we are recommending to the board that the contract be renewed for another year with a 6-month review for performance. Should those measures not improve over those 6 months, the recommendation to the board would be for a frankly, a cancellation of the contract.
You need a recommendation to approve?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve the recommendation to extend the contract?
So moved, Sal.
I'll second that, Donnie.
Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, let's move to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
We might need to do a roll call vote.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's do a roll call vote then. Svetlana?
Yeah, Sal, you want to do it? Now you have a roster. What do you want me to do?
I think I have the roster, so I'll be happy to do it.
That's fine.
May I ask a question before you start the vote? You said this is for extending contracts. Did you say with a specific organization or just extending contracts?
EDSI only.
EDSI,
Okay.
just the one with EDSI.
Okay, are we ready? Catherine Jocelyn.
Yes, 4.
Lydia Padilla.
In favor of, yes.
Paul Smith,
In favor of, yes.
James Alexander,
Yes.
Dale Ruth Setz,
Yes.
Donnie Carroll,
I favor the extension.
Henry Johnson,
Not here.
Julie Fickus,
Yes, in favor.
Sal Valadez, yes, in favor. Sherry Tillis,
Yes.
Kimberly Chaplin,
Not here.
Mary Lammy,
Not here.
Tambra Cross,
Yes, I'm sorry, I was muted. Yes.
Crystal Heron,
Yes.
Dallas Holland,
Not here.
Tommy Davis Jr.,
Not here.
Mike LaMartina, Edward Bryant,
Yes.
Danita Neal, Michelle Graham, Roger Spearman,
I heard from Roger Spearman. He sent me an email. I don't know if I can forward it to everybody. He may be unable to speak, but he said yes to the current motion. So he must be on the phone and must be one of the individuals that wasn't transferred.
Thank you very much. So Roger Spearman is affirmative. Ian Barrett,
Had to step away.
Lucnell Harburger, I'm sorry,
He's not in.
she's not here. Susan Egan,
Yes.
thank you for your vote.
Sal, I'm sorry, you forgot John Stifler.
You're right. John Stifler, and I think he's not here.
He's on the phone, and he tried to answer up 3 times when the roll call was taken, but he couldn't make it through.
Thank you.
And so was there a vote, Paul?
I don't have a vote for him, no.
Okay. I think that's it, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so what are the results of the vote?
Oh, Svetlana. Okay, this was my first time. I forgot to count.
I know, we have 13 people. We have 13.
Should we check to see if we have any nays? Because then that would give us an idea as to whether we have any.
Right.
Right.
Any nays?
Okay.
Okay. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Now to the sub-recipient St. Louis Public School System contract extension.
Paul, this is Lydia Padilla.
Yes,
I have just a quick question regarding EDSI. Are they in a contract still with the state of Missouri to kind of revamp the work centers? I'm just curious, just because that's kind of a tie-in to what we're doing. And there may be new board members on that aren't aware of that relationship. So I just wanted to put it out there since we just agreed to a new contract with them this year.
Lydia, yes, I will answer that question as a employee with the Office of Workforce Development. Yes, they are.
Okay, good question. Rebecca, you were saying?
I'm sorry, Paul, can I jump in right quick? We have 2 callers on the attendee side, which I suspect one of them is maybe our members. Can we please clear those unknown people and maybe move them into the together with the board? Can we allow a few minutes to ask those people to identify themselves?
Sure.
We have 2 phone numbers, and I'm going to ask people to unmute. And then the phone number that ends with 007. cannot unmute that person. Andy, for some reason I cannot unmute. Yes, 088. Could you please identify yourself?
Danita Neal, thank
Oh,
you.
this is Danita. Okay. Okay, so we can move you. No, you're good actually. So you on the phone and you also online too. You're in both places. What about 007? The phone number ends with 007.
That's Roger Spearman.
Okay, Roger Spearman. Finally.
I'm unmuted now. Yes, I'm on.
Uh-huh. All right, so good morning to you. Thank you so much. So did you vote in favor of the extending the contract with EDSI?
I voted in favor.
In favor. Very good. Thank you so much. This is all.
Okay. So moving ahead to the subrecipient SLPS contract extension.
Becky, would you mind taking this one?
No problem. You know, there's been a lengthy contract process going on with the St. Louis system. It has taken some time between their process and our process to get the contract in place. They took it to their board, and then we had to take it to the Board of ENA, and then it has to go to the comptroller's office, and getting that contract back has been a little bit slow. So we are asking for the board to extend the contract time period, which was originally set to expire at the end of June, for another year. And at this point in time, the contract is for, I believe, $156,000, and we had reduced it because of the time period. Now we would take it back to this board if we ever decided to increase it, to add additional funding. So, you know, for this next year, that would be something we would have to look at once we knew what the allocation was from the state, and we could talk to you about it and determine whether, you know, with the progress, whether we wanted to proceed. But at this point, that's where the situation stands. And so we're asking for the board to grant an extension so we can get that program up and going fully. It is started to some extent, but not really, because we need that contract in place to really fully implement the program.
Rebecca, this is Donnie. Is that for the AEL program?
No.
No.
It's an out-of-school youth program that ties into the kids that have gone through AEL that may be getting ready to take their high set.
Okay.
And so the advantage is the school system knows which kids are ready and primed to do that. We can get them into work experience and kind of tie that in with the program objectives of WIOA.
Very good. Okay, thank you.
Any questions on this? Any further questions? Okay, hearing none, then do we have a motion to approve, or do we need to do a roll call on this?
Before we do that, we should make sure that there is one conflict. And I know Tamara won't vote, but I just wanted to make sure she reminded her to acknowledge that and indicate that she's got a conflict and she won't vote.
Right.
Okay.
Do we need to do a roll call, Rebecca, on this, or?
I don't think so. We could probably just go ahead and see if we got approval, and then if there's any nays, we can figure it out from there if we need to go back and do a roll call.
Gotcha. Okay. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion to approve the extension of the SLPS contract for a year.
And this is Kathy. I'll second that motion.
Okay, so we got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries.
Wait a minute. Tamara needs to say that she has a conflict, I believe.
Oh, wait, yeah.
I abstain from voting.
Thank you so much, Svetlana.
Yeah, I thought we just went through that. That's okay. Next item on the agenda, budget transfer.
From time to time, we'll need to move funds between cost categories. And the time frame to do this can be problematic because of the next board meeting. So we're asking that you approve the request to move the $8,978. There's a letter in your packet that will be sent once the board votes to approve this.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve that vote?
Lydia Padilla moves.
Okay, any discussion?
Yeah, Howard, can you share with us any additional information other than administrative costs?
What I will do is a lot of the day-to-day is handled by our deputy, and I'll turn it over to Cassandra Williams. Cassandra?
There we go. Good morning.
Good morning.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So what we have here under our administrative salary and fringes, that is our supportive staff here, fiscal and other administrative staff that support our grant, and particularly this one is with our Wheel Youth. Because there were not a lot of operational costs associated due to telecommuting, we would need to transfer those funds from operations or other administrative into the administrative salary and supporting those programs. Therefore, that is the rationale behind the administrative salary fringe transfer as opposed to the other category.
Thank you very much.
And Mr. Chairman, so you know, Cassandra's deputy is doing a great job, and I intend to throw her more into the fire as these meetings progress.
I have a question. The motion says from fringe to other, and the letter says from other to fringe. They conflict.
That might have been my mistake. Let me take a look.
It is from other to admin salary fringes.
So the motion's wrong. I apologize, you guys. Thank you for catching that, Jim. So yes, make the motion to do as the letter states, from other to admin fringe.
So there will be a need to redo the motion, Becky.
Right.
Yes, sorry.
It's okay.
That's okay.
Do we have a motion on the new wording?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll move on to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item is budget transfer authority.
So I'll speak on this one, Howard, if that's okay.
Yes, of course.
When we were meeting to kind of go over the agenda and talk to Paul about how this other matter, number 3, would be on the agenda, it came to our attention that, you know, even these little transfers would always have to go to the board. And the issue is sometimes we don't have meetings. It could be 6 weeks, 8 weeks before we have the next meeting, and we realize that we've got to do this transfer. We thought it might be prudent to go ahead and allow some authority on Paul's end to go ahead and approve a transfer if it was within a certain percentage, very, you know, kind of small percentage, like 10%. So we're asking for the board to go ahead and grant that so that we could kind of move things along more quickly from an administrative standpoint.
Rebecca, I've got a quick question for you.
Go ahead.
If we do this, can we get a report? Can the board get a report subsequent to those for the next board meeting? Okay.
Yes. In fact,
Does that need to be in the motion, or we just?
We could put that in the motion, if that's fine, that, you know, subsequent to any type of transfer like that, that's approved by Paul, that we would report to the board that occurred.
Thank you.
Hi, Rebecca, it's Crystal. Just a quick question. So in terms of, you said up to 10%, so what's the, give me an approximate, what's the highest that could possibly be?
That is a good question. And I think it would depend if we're looking at which budget, because they're different budgets. From an admin standpoint, Cassandra, do you have any perspective onto what that amount actually is? Is it around like 20,000 or is it higher than that?
It would depend on what line items are being moved around as far as the 10%. So it's not a locked number. For example, in the one that we just did, that 8,000 is less than 10% of what is currently in that line. The state requires 2 signatures in order to do a modification in the system on the budget, one of them being the executive director and the second being the board chair with the, and so if it's greater than 10%, then that's a whole different process that has to take place for that to be approved. But again, to wrap around to your question, it would depend upon what amount was in that line that we're requesting the transfer for.
Following up on Board Member Herron's question, should there be a limit? I mean, you know, I think she brought up a good point. If you get a $500,000 budget, 10% is much bigger than if you had a budget that's obviously lower. So do we need to think about a limit?
The amount of the 10% transfer would not be based upon the total budget. It would be based upon the 2 lines that you're wanting to transfer it from.
So Cassandra, what you're saying is that there could be an admin line that's got 20,000 and another line that's like what you're saying, Fringes, well, or other as it was in this case. And that's why it's based on that 10% in those cost categories.
Yes.
And I guess the question would be, would there ever be a cost category that, you know, I guess was significantly higher and then transferring it to the other cost category? I guess we would just need to see, you know, the budget to see if that was the case. I don't see all the budgets, so I can't specifically give you an idea as to what kind of dollar amount that would be. You know, the one option we would have is to have the board cap it at a certain amount, and then we could always take it to the board when it reached that amount.
If I could just make a comment too, right here, if you guys don't mind. This is Lydia. I saw this a bunch over the last few years. I'm fine without, I'm fine with the 10%, just from my experience. There are so many, there's so much documentation that's required for us to move any of the funds that qualify in different categories, that once we're audited, once it's looked at, we can't move anything without a lot of compliance. So I'd feel comfortable if I were the board chair signing off on it. I would personally feel comfortable with the process that it takes to get to me to approve it. That being said, again, if we want to put a number amount on it, I get it, but numbers, you know, are always changing, and we do have so many different programs. You know, I'd be fine if someone proposed a number, but I do think that there is a lot of compliance around moving any funding anywhere from anywhere. I'm pretty confident with our infrastructure that we're covered doing that. I would just maybe add that maybe if it's over $5,000, the whole executive committee reviews it, or it's in the executive committee report after every executive committee meeting in the minutes. So there might be some other kind of documentation we can do to make sure everyone's up to date on kind of the process and the workflow that happened around it.
Lydia, do you suggest that be built into the motion, the process? In other words, the 10% with a signature of both our executive director and our chair, and then anything that I'm trying to think about how you would word this, or does it have to be?
I personally think 10% is fine. It's 10% of whatever the number is. That I think covers maybe large buckets of program money and small buckets of program money. But in the grand scheme, if it's not more than 10%, and if it's in compliance with all of our WIOA requirements and our state requirements to get to the point to transfer it, then I think we're safe foundation wise on how we operate. And if Rebecca has anything to add to that, I'm not sure.
Thank you.
I would just like to add to that there are only particular lines that transfers can occur within our requirement for performance. There are certain percentages that have to remain in particular lines. For example, with our WIOA youth program, it has to remain 20% of the budget in the WEX line, which is our work experience categories. So those cannot be touched because we have to maintain that performance in that area. Likewise, with our adult and DW programs, right now we're under the 30-70. That may shift for the new program year to 60-40. However, if it's 30 or if it's 40, we have to keep that percentage in our occupational skills and training categories for our adult and DW programs. So there are definitely lines that cannot have those movements.
Thank you.
I'm
satisfied with what I've heard. I was just curious. It was just a question. And so I feel comfortable knowing that those parameters are sort of built in already.
There's many eyes on this process. So are we okay with the motions as set forth? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Excuse me, guys, who made the motion?
Yeah, I don't know who made the motion either.
I don't think we had a motion.
Oh, then I'm sorry, I jumped the gun on us. I need a motion.
So moved, Ian Barrett.
Okay, second.
Anita Neal, second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Now for the next item of business, committee sign up. We have two standing committees, one being the Workforce Strategic Planning and Innovation Committee, and the other being the Finance Committee. And I believe we need folks to sign up for those committees. It says here that you can notify Svetlana which one of the two committees that you want to sign up for, subcommittees that you want to sign up for. Just notify her via email. Let me see. Is there any other comments on that, the subcommittees? Just kind of pick one. If you go through your bylaws, it just gives a good description of what they are. Okay. Moving on from there, there's no reports. Matters from the board? Any matters from the board?
I have a question, Paul, if I may. It's Lydia Padilla. When we were looking at the unemployment numbers, and Howard mentioned the federal subsidies right now to the $300 a week for unemployment for employees. Our company looked at a non-working pay rate for the city of St. Louis, the region of St. Louis. And we came up with a number based on full unemployment benefits and $300. We're at about a $15.70 an hour of a non-working rate. I've seen lots of job fairs get posted. I know Lowe's is doing one. I know Ballpark Village is doing one. As an owner of a recruiting business, we cannot recruit candidates right now. Our applicant pool in the country dropped 70% in the last 90, 120 days, and we're not seeing it rebound yet. I was just curious if there are things that, we're a group of workforce people. If this is unique to the staffing industry. I know Kathy's shaking her head no. I know our participant level, Larry's probably shaking his head that we can't get people in. So I don't know as a group if there's something citywide we can do, if there's something we can approach with the new mayor. The tax base is low without people working when I right now have 30 jobs that we cannot fill. So just kind of an open question about what recruiting looks like right now and why can we not get people in to apply when unemployment in the city is so high? I understand it's a much bigger question. And if people aren't paying at least $15.70 with daycare and transportation, I get all of those data points. But I don't know if anyone has a comment, and maybe that was a little bit of a vent too. So I apologize for that, but it's something that we're seeing across our company in all of the major markets that we're in.
That's a really good point, Lydia. I'm curious, like you said, with daycare, et cetera, that are incorporated in a single parent working. I'm curious what it would take salary wise in order to get somebody off of that program.
I've heard of entities offering, and I was surprised when I heard this, sign-on bonuses. I mean, that's how desperate the market is right now for workers. So it would be interesting to see what entities like Vitendo for Africa or the African Chambers or the Hispanic Chamber, the chambers in general have, what their perspective is from their membership, and is it an opportunity to collaborate across sectors? Just the question.
Well, I don't know, how many more months do we have of that program running?
Till September 30, I believe.
I figured that's how long it's going to be a problem. And I don't know what else we can do, because at $15.70, and you add some more in that to cover the other expenses associated with working, such as transportation, you're probably talking close to $20 an hour for a basic entry-level job. And I don't know how many businesses could actually afford to do that. So being able to compete with that free money is very hard. It's going to be tough till September is what I feel. I hate to say it, but that's just straight from the gut.
With the budget deficits the nation has before it, we know this will not go on forever. So I suppose we need to communicate with the public about job openings, retooling, et cetera, because a reckoning is going to come, and it's our job to prepare them for it.
Right, and we need to be ready for it, because I got a feeling there's going to be an avalanche when it happens.
Yep.
Good stuff, good stuff. Any other matters before the board?
I'll just chime in real quickly. This is Crystal Heron with a slightly different perspective. Wages and earnings, that's a concern, obviously. So our school year ends here in a couple of weeks, and we just had we just had a job fair. It was a virtual job fair. And these are folks who had the opportunity to graduate with a certificate of technology or an associate degree in technology, and be gainfully employed. Right. And so our traffic in this virtual environment was really, really embarrassing. And these individuals have invested in their education, and they're on the precipice of literally going to work. It's pulling teeth to get them to participate. And I don't know if we've had employers calling us saying, hey, just let me get into the classroom. If I can just get into the classroom and talk to them, I know I can get them. They're calling me, they're calling all around the college, any connection that they might have, just to have FaceTime with students. Whereas before, they would all assemble across the street and we'd have 500 employers, and it's this really impressive job fair. We did the same thing last fall. It was virtual, and we may have gotten 200 people over the course of 6 hours to log on and we have up to 900 graduates. I mean, there's a problem, and I don't know if it's just earnings potential. You understand what I'm saying? So I just wanted to add that different perspective.
All right.
I was going to say I tend to agree with what Crystal said. I don't necessarily. I think that the wage issue is an issue, but I think that we may be also dealing with some trauma, just some social emotional trauma. I mean, we have been in a pandemic, and we still are, and I think that's something we we're a workforce development board, but I think we need to realize that there may be some psychological issues happening. As well, and so even though the workforce, the federal funds run at the end of September, I think what we're seeing from some of our agencies that they are directly related, they're directly dealing with clients, and is like that folks are just emotionally unwell because of the trauma, and so that's another element that we need to kind of consider.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Yeah, there's several things at play. There is no such thing as a one button fix for these problems.
Paul, is there any information regarding how different sectors are being hit? I know with friends in the restaurant business, they can't find people. They cannot find people to work for them. Yeah. And so maybe it would help us if we understood what the impact is across the sectors.
Is there a way we can get a report on sector performance as far as unemployment goes?
There's tons of DOL data, and there's also lots of Merrick data. Some of it's old, so I don't know if we're really seeing what the true pulse is, this Q1, Q2, what it's going to look like. So there's a lot of data, but just even all of the analysts, the Fed, they're saying that, the hourly wages of individuals who are particularly in manufacturing, industrial, those individuals are probably the most in demand right now. I think, they talked on Bloomberg this morning about Amazon not being enough at Amazon any longer. And that's understandable, but that'll also mean that all of our smaller local manufacturing companies will affect them in the labor pool. So, Jim Alexander, I see you shaking your head. That's probably, something you see and we all look at regularly. So, Sal, there is a lot of data. Again, what it means when we're on the ground trying to get people in our doors and trying to help do training and deal with a lot of the issues, Ed's talking about, personally, we lost my father-in-law to COVID in January, and it's been very stressful. And luckily we have, my husband has a job that he can work remotely and be in Tulsa most of every month. So there's a lot of that going on too. It is still, when the economy starts to recover, like they're saying, Q4 is going to be 3% unemployment again, is what they're possibly predicting. Mm-hmm. So, getting ahead of it, if possible, in the city of St. Louis, with the new mayor, if there's a way we can be the people that create the model versus be the people that try to follow a model that doesn't work for us, I think there might just be some opportunities there to consider.
Absolutely. And the other thing is the reality of the vaccine reluctance, the phenomena of the vaccine reluctance. I mean, we want a safe workplace in the construction industry. We spent a lot of time and resources keeping our workers safe, but with the non-vaxxers and then the realities of the workplace and the fear, the mental health of people, that has to be having some role in how people are thinking about work, the reality of going back to work.
There's a lot of things at play here, not just the workforce availability, but one of the things that we're experiencing in construction is the availability of materials, lumber, steel, all that stuff is in very short demand now. And that's having an impact on the ability of contractors to perform, which directly impacts employment. So how much of this stuff is interrelated in a large loop? It's a big problem. and it's one for us to really think about as we move forward. I think we should bear all these things in mind. Thank you for your input. Moving along, do we have any matters from the executive director?
Just a note. I really enjoyed Rochelle's presentation today. All my years on the board, we've never had that, so it was really good. She brought up a point I'd be interested in hearing about, briefly at a future meeting, and that's staff development plans and board development plans. That's a special interest of mine, and I'd like to see what we'll be doing in terms of staff and board development between now and the end of the year.
Good point, Jim. Good point. Thank you.
Paul, I've got one thing. I think when we did the consent agenda, we didn't actually do a motion to accept it. That's the reports that we had that included the survey.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure that I, had a motion on that and accepted it.
Okay, so I will entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda.
So moved, Ian Barrett.
Second, Lydia.
I'm
so sorry. I think we did.
I thought we did that.
Yeah, Danny was the first one. And
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Okay, I apologize. I thought we didn't do it. Okay.
No, I thought we did.
All right.
Okay.
Everything is cool and copacetic. That's the word for the day, by the way.
Copacetic.
Okay, now I've lost my spot on the agenda. Here we are, 5. All right.
Matters from the executive director.
So any matters from the executive director?
Want to call your attention to the area chat. EDSI has submitted some information. Great feedback from the state developer of workforce, state director of workforce on their enrollment. So there has been some progress from EDSI, and you can all read that in your chat. Here at the city, all of the directors met for the first time, kind of the alphabet soup, SLDC, PDA, CDA, slate Monday, and we will continue to work toward collaborative policy making for the betterment of economic development and workforce for the city. And I'll keep you informed of, what we accomplish. That's it for me.
Okay. Any matters from the public?
We have only one public representative, Jeff Cardinal.
Do you have anything?
Jeff, you can talk if you want to introduce yourself. Maybe not.
Okay. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Just before, I did notice that earlier that Halbert Sullivan's visitation is today. I think it's from 1:30 to 6 at Schrader Funeral Home. Is that right, Sherry?
Yes, it's at Schrader in Baldwin, Missouri, and the services began at 6:30 until 7:30.
Okay.
Thank you.
And just to follow up on that, Ed probably took that from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch article on Halbert.
Yep.
And a legend has passed, everyone.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. All right. A motion to adjourn?
So moved, Ian Barrett.
Second?
Sorry, Jan was the first one?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have a second?
Second, Sherry Tillis.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, we're adjourned. Next meeting is May 25.